Hello, colleagues, friends. I'm very happy. This is the 20th annual Russian Donors Forum, and today we'll discuss support for culture and arts internationally. Culture is always at the heart, at the center of everything. Culture is everywhere. And on the one hand, we have cooperation. At the same time, sometimes we have confrontation between countries, and it all happens in the realm of culture quite often. Anyway, of course, we know that in the philanthropy sector, people tend to focus on healthcare, social issues, and there is always not too much attention given to culture. Usually, there are just some major donors, very few people who want to support culture because this is part of their legacy, maybe. So today we'll talk about various BRICS countries. We'll share some best practices. We'll see how the situation is special in each country and how we can improve the overall situation. Maybe we need some new legislation. Maybe we need a new crisis management strategy. I don't know. It's very important to remember about culture in the world today because people talk about hunger, people talk about wars, many other things, and we tend to forget about culture. But it's really important to keep culture at the front of our mind. And I know that the Russian Donors Forum prepared a new study on BRICS countries and culture in BRICS countries. First, I give the floor to Alexandra Boldyreva, the CEO of Russian Donors Forum. So Sasha can tell us about this study that they did recently about culture. Sasha? Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that we are still continuing this study. We have some preliminary results, but we are not finished. So this is a work in progress. And every country is special in its own way. And I'm very grateful to India because India is very well represented in this session. And of course, we will talk about every country. In particular, we have another event that we plan later on for China. Okay, speaking of BRICS countries, on the one hand, the economic situation in our countries is very different. Initially, when we just started talking about BRICS, we realized we had a lot of things in common. But then we got into details and we realized that we are also very different. Each country is very special in its own way. So when we talk about culture, even the definition of culture is very different in every country. And this is very important because if we want our support for culture to be systemic, it's important to have the right definition of culture. It's important for the government, for donors. So we studied this matter and legislation. Our countries have very different legislation for culture. For example, our countries use different approaches to supporting culture. I would say China is very different from other BRICS countries in this respect because the government plays a dominant role in China. China has a common approach for philanthropy. They treat it as an investment. So the Chinese approach, the Chinese experience seemed very interesting to us because their support for culture is comprehensive. For example, if they build a new theater, new opera, a new event center, they always build a hotel right next door, other infrastructure. So they have this kind of comprehensive approach. And when people launch a cultural project, they treat it as business. And I think it's a very useful idea. I think we can learn from China in this respect. Okay. Like I said, the situation is special in every country. For example, South Africa is very much closed, and it's really hard to understand who really funds a particular project. They have a lot of museums, but supporting culture is not that popular in this country. There are these differences. There's this gap between white people and black people, and this influences the situation in the country very much, including culture. And of course, religion also plays a very important role in supporting culture. Let me move on to Brazil. Brazil is special in its own way. Brazilian people, they like festivals. They have these culture of festivals, carnivals, etc. And this attracts a lot of international companies, commerce, etc., etc. So that's what's so special about Brazil. You can study Brazil as a separate phenomenon. Next, let's move on to India. We have a lot of Indians here, so they will speak about their country. But what I would say, Indians are always open for partnership. A lot of players, a lot of international players involved inside India. There are many foundations, many companies willing to work together. Of course, there are ups and downs, successes and failures, but Indians are very, very creative people. So in India, we saw that the landscape is very diverse. There are private donors supporting culture. There's the government supporting culture. So together with Nikolay, we are doing a joint project with his foundation, Art, Sport, and Culture. So it's great that they were able to do this in-depth study. So I just want to say, as far as legislation is concerned, it's kind of difficult to share that because the situation is different in different countries. But we could consider ways how culture is supported in various countries and learn what works in one country, what other countries could learn from each other. I can ask two questions. First of all, what about taxation? Did you study taxation in BRICS countries? Any tax benefits for culture? Well, there are incentives. For example, in Brazil, they have a federal law for promoting culture. They support investment in culture. They reduce taxes for cultural entities and authors, people. In 2022, Brazil thought about passing a new law on urgent measures to support culture, but this law did not pass. So we could only talk about it hypothetically, but I'm not sure whether we should get into that. Well, there are some tax benefits in various countries, but they're not culture specific. For example, in South Africa, they just have a general tax benefit for philanthropy, not just for culture alone. Okay, my second question to you is there any difference between supporting classical arts and contemporary arts? Because, for example, in Russia, the government likes to support traditional arts and not so much supporting contemporary art. This is mostly supported by private companies. What about the situation in other BRICS countries? Do they have this kind of division, like the government supports classical arts, or do they also support contemporary new art? In Brazil, they do support contemporary arts, things that are new, popular. They get a lot of support in Brazil, but in other countries, maybe not so much. But their situation is very different. Traditional arts are often supported by the government or community funds. But you need the right definition of traditional arts, classical arts. It depends on the country. For example, in China, they love European music, European arts, and the government supports that European culture. But that's because they have a strategy, they have a program. They like to bring the best things to China. They go all over the world, find the best things, and bring it all to China. In Russia, the government mostly supports traditional arts, traditional culture, but private donors very often support contemporary arts, modern arts. In the last couple of years, I heard a lot of things, a lot of people saying that we really need to support contemporary artists, artists who are here today, so we can develop culture and arts that exist today. Okay, that's good. That's great. Let's move on. Our next speaker is Nikolay Trotsky, Arts, Culture and Sports Foundation. Alexander mentioned that they have a joint project with the Nikolay's foundation. So our time limits, by the way, is 7 to 10 minutes per person. Yes, hi. It's very appropriate that I speak first, because I can really explain why this is so important. It was our foundation that initiated this discussion, this session, and earlier at the beginning of this year, Sasha and I planned a lot of international studies, including international NGOs, European NGOs, etc., etc. But then the situation in the world changed around dramatically. And the international situation is very important for the NGO sector, including our foundation. Why? Our foundation is one of the leading foundations in the sector, and we definitely do a lot to support arts and culture. Our founder was recognized the most generous supporter of arts last year by the Sunday Times. And Mr. Osmanov does a lot for culture all over the world. And of course, we are very interested to learn more about different countries, what kind of mechanisms they use, how they work. At this point, we are mostly working in Asia, but in the future, we also want to do a similar study in Europe and in the United States. It's just very difficult for us to do this study right now because of the international situation. Since our foundation is a leading foundation, we often talk to the government, to the Ministry of Culture, we talk to artists, we discuss how we can support various initiatives in various parts of Russia. We discuss financial support, we discuss legislative support, and it's important for us to learn from other countries. We should draw from their experience, and they do have a lot of useful experience. I'm absolutely sure that we will hear a lot of interesting things today. We have Sergey Brilev here. He knows everything about Latin America, so he's going to tell us all about support for arts and culture in Brazil and in other Latin American countries. And Our foundation, we provide a lot of grants for cultural projects, and we are also interested in learning from foundations in other countries. We want to learn from other countries in that respect as well. For example, we all know that support for NGOs, in the past, people would support a particular project, a particular program, but today it is slightly different. Today, money goes to structural organizations who support a whole system, a whole structure working on a particular issue. So I think we could use the same model with culture and arts. This is the direction that we should be going on. In other words, what I'm saying is you don't just support a particular festival, a particular event. No, it should be systemic. You should support infrastructure, NGOs who work on major issues related to culture and arts, who don't just sponsor small specific events, but they have a large-scale, comprehensive program. So I think I will stop here because we are all eager to listen to our international participants. Like Sasha, I'm mostly here to listen, to learn from you, to learn more how government support works in your countries, how private donor support works in your countries. What about fundraising events? This is also important. This is also a very interesting subject. So we would also like to learn about that. So, Dmitry, I think I will stop here, and I'm ready to listen. Oh, wait a second, I have a question for you. You talk about systemic support, about institutions. We have like the Hermitage Museum, the Bolshoi Theater, but those large institutions, they get a lot of cash anyway because everybody likes to support them. But there are, like, you may have isolated artists who work alone, but you can also provide systemic support to a large number of these isolated individual artists. Like, yes, we did have a program like that, a program that provided systemic support for making arts accessible to blind people. Well, institutions like the Bolshoi Theater and the Hermitage Museum, they know how to get money from the government. They prepare specific projects, then they go to the government, request for funds, and they get money. And then smaller projects, they do need support coming from this kind of systemic infrastructure support organizations. For example, you can have a national center for supporting regional arts projects or supporting specific individual artists. Right. I think we do need this kind of mechanisms and tools, because right now we have financial mechanisms for supporting festivals, one-off events, exhibitions, etc. But we don't have a comprehensive support system. This is what we lack. This is what we need to fix. This is something we should work on. And this is what we should learn from other countries about. Okay, we have 3 Indian participants. We'll start with Dasha.
I hope her colleagues will speak afterwards. Dasha, you have the floor.
Hey, a very good afternoon to everyone. As I was introduced, my name Sasha Kotwani. I am the director of a non-profit organization called the Indian National Culture Center, Sita. So Sita is based in Russia, and today I've brought with me two partners from India. I will talk a little about how we, as an international company, promote Indian festivals in Russia, and then we will give the platform to my colleagues who will talk about how they are able to find donors, what problems they face in India itself. So I would just like to share my presentation. Right. So the Indian National Culture Sita has been running for the last 18 years, actually. It is a nonprofit organization, as I mentioned, and our mission is to promote Indian culture and heritage to Indians, Russians, expats in Moscow and in Russia. As you guys know, India-Russia friendship is nothing new. We've actually been friends for a very, very long time, and we recently celebrated 75 years of our friendship and our diplomatic relations. So we have been close from the very beginning. Before I start, I would like to say the only reason we do festivals, we do events, and the only reason we are able to do what we do today is because of the love and support we get from Russia. So every event we put through, the support we get is the only reason we have been running for 18 years, and the only reason we are going to be running for the next years and decades. So I will just slowly and quickly actually go by the events that we do and how we interact with Russia and how Russia is such a big support team here. We actually do festivals. So the first festival that we organize is called India Day. This is our 7th year organizing this festival, and this festival this year was after the 2-year pandemic that we faced, and we got 1.8 million attendees and 1 million viewers online, and of course 95% of that is Russians. That just shows the love and support that Russia provides. India Day is a mini India in Russia. We promote all aspects of India as possible, and for example, we promote Indian culture through dance. We have a big dance platform where 12 hours non-stop for 4 days. We have participants from India and Russia who show all kinds of dance forms, from classical to semi to Bollywood. And you will be surprised, but 90% of our dancers are actually Russians, who have dedicated their love and time to Indian culture and have professioned themselves even better than some of our Indians are in classical dance and Bollywood as well. This festival promotes different aspects as well. This year, our main theme was ecology and better living, especially after the pandemic. So for ecology, we planted 75 trees for our 75 years of friendship. And we invited different people who have dedicated their time to our friendship together. And for better health, we have had a relaxed zone where we promoted yoga, meditation, Ayurveda, and not only for adults, but for children, and even mainly for pensioners and even pregnant women. So we really try to make sure everyone can have something to do. Other than that, we do many other different activities in India Day, but one of our special activities is actually called the Indian Live Wedding, where Russian couples get the chance to marry Indian style for the second time. And we had over 100 couples who got married in 4 days. So it was a beautiful tradition. Other than that, we do international yoga festivals. We've done it for 4 years. Recently, we did it in Park Zaradi near the Kremlin, where people got to try different parts of yoga, physical, mental, and we had over 150 schools, yoga schools that came together for free to promote yoga and healthy living. During our festival, we have a lot of support from people like famous people who also really promote yoga and meditation. For example, we had Sati Kazanova who came, and we had one of the biggest yogi of India, Shri Ravi Shankar, who came all the way to Russia to support this festival. Other than that, Give me a second. We also, during the pandemic, did, as we were not able to move around and we're at home, we did a yoga festival online on Vikantat, and we were able to give people the peace of mind during the uncertain time, as well as a little bit of physical movement. And we had over 750,000 viewers during this live session. Other than that, we like to promote different aspects of India. As you know, Bollywood is one of the biggest. So we promote Indian films through Indian film festivals. We have done Indian film festival for the past 5 years, where we not only show the traditional movies that Russia are grown and known to, but also modern movies showing how different India has changed over the years and how much India has developed as well. So this is just from the opening of some of the festivals. And then we do other small events such as Holi Festival. We've actually been doing Holi Festival for 15 years. We welcome the spring with color, and a lot of Russians participate as well as expats, and it's just a way to get from all the stress that's happening around. It's a good escape to enjoy through colors. Other than that, we actually promote Indian fashion and textile. We do many fashion shows where we show all types of Indian outfits from the most traditional to today modern world. We not only, our main aim is that we show that India is a kind of country that our models are not the typical models that you see. India is a country of all types of women of different size, height. So all our models are normal women, day-to-day women who show their tradition style. Other than that, we do many other small festivals. We do support a lot of children activities. We do a lot of sports festivals, as well as chess competitions between Indians and Russians. We also did, if the slide would go, oh, here we go. We also did a drawing competition, and it was all over Russia, where for Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, everyone had the chance to participate. We had over 500 participants of Indians and Russians from all over Russia. And it was very hard to choose a winner, but we were able to pick few. And it was one of the most beautiful competition and very interactive. So for us, Russia is a big support system. We are not able to, the only reason we are able to do what we are today is because of the support and love from Russia. And we're very grateful, and we will continue expressing our love all together. I have put our a little QR code of our social media, our website, and we are always open for partnerships and to do cross-culture events, and just to be there for each other. And I feel like 75 years of friendship shows a lot, and I look forward, and we as a nonprofit organization look forward to continue that relationship. We have added 2 of our partners from India who will continue about how it actually works in India, how they are organizing, how their company runs, how do they find donors, and we'll be able to speak more on that topic. So thank you.
Thank you, Dasha. It was, I think, fascinating, and I've heard about your cultural center. I think last year during the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, where you also were presenting your experience, and I think it was really great that there is this kind of public initiatives when people, just ordinary people in the form of non-governmental organization, try to organize this kind of events, and I think it's perfect. One question for you. Do you have any form of, I don't know, common support for your activities? Do you involve Indian officials into this, or authorities into this kind of events and activities?
Definitely. So the Indian Embassy is always a big supporter, and they do give grants, even if it's small. They do try to support their best to all our initiatives, as we are doing our best to promote India-Russia friendship. Other than that, we do get support from private organizations a little bit, but we have been suffering. Only this year, we were able to find 2 company sponsors, but before that, it was all through somewhat donations, but other than that, from our pocket. And we only do this because we love Russia and we love our culture, and that's the only reason we're doing, but we are working very hard to try. The biggest problems we faced before was from companies is like, why should we support your festival? Why should we support you guys? Our brand is not India. But what they don't understand is this festival, because of so much friendship, we bring together our audience are 99% Russian. There's not that many Indians in Russia, unfortunately. So we try to tell them that you're not only supporting the festival, but you're able to target audience from all kinds. So this year, fortunately, we were able to get some help, but we're still working very hard to really show that such festivals do bring not only bring happiness, but bring the kind of audience that can help everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Ну, сейчас мы сделаем тогда небольшой прыжочек.
So now we'll leap from India to America, because I understand that Sergey Brilev needs to run to another event, and we'll give him the floor now. Please tell us, Sergey, about your experience, because you know everything about Latin America. How are things done there in terms of support for culture? And there's a particular aspect you wanted to dwell on. And you need to unmute your microphone. Okay. Can you hear me well? Yes, we can hear you excellently. Thank you very much, Dmitry. The other event is a live transmission, because in Brazil there was a major scandal. Bolsonaro was seen at a Freemason meeting. And so we'll have to comment on that. Our session is dedicated to BRICS. I will speak about Brazil, of course, but I will speak more about the whole of Latin America, including Brazil. I wanted to catch on to a thought that we heard at the beginning. How can we fit cultural events into the business agenda? I have been able to succeed with this several times, although the success was limited, because in most cases, Russian businesses have a peculiar way of looking at the things that I'm about to talk about. The most successful experience dates back to 2014 and 2015, when the creators of the movie called Stalingrad, that belonged to Sony Pictures, surprisingly, gave us the non-commercial rights to broadcast it. And I took it on a tour of several dozen Latin American countries, including Santiago, Chile, Belgrano in Argentina, the theater Vendario in Nicaragua, Simon Bolivar Center in Venezuela, and so on. We had an interesting precedent there. That was a cultural event. We supplemented it with exhibitions of documents from Russian Foreign Affairs Ministry archive on the establishment of diplomatic relations with Latin American countries. There was an exhibition dedicated to Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. But when it came to the actual first show of this non-commercial movie, Stalingrad, in Uruguay, we did this at a resort. It was attended by senators, rectors of university, but there are also business people there who sponsored this showing, this viewing, and the rental of the movie theater. And they also set up a dinner, and that's where the partnership relations were established. They had been seeking these relations, and we said, okay, maybe you can fund something really philanthropic, and then we'll help you with that. That is possible, but that doesn't happen very often. In that regard, I would like to speak about a more recent experience. Just recently, they celebrated the bicentennial of the trip of Lazarev Bellingshausen to the Antarctica for the Americas. Fund was behind this, and I had wanted to install several monuments to Lazarev and Bellingshausen. We did this in 2 cases, 2-meter bronze statues. The mold can sustain 8 molds. The conjecture was against me. It's hard to build those in England, for example, but we did one in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, and in Montevideo, Uruguay, and Bellingshausen Station in Antarctic. As for Brazil, I have to say that unfortunately, the Russian businesses that are present there, we have a trade of $8 billion with Brazil. We supply fertilizers. Brazil is 30% dependent on Russian fertilizers. That's an absolutely strategic commodity for a country that is considered to be the vegetable garden of America. And when I came there, I couldn't find an opportunity to fund such a project while also wrapping it with cultural wrapping. I couldn't understand it. It seemed to me that there were some real difficult situations with Rusev impeachment, and then there were problems with Bolsonaro. So, but that seemed like a perfect opportunity to make ties and connections and establish these connections. But unfortunately, the business community of Russian companies didn't respond to this, and therefore, I would like to thank to the philanthropists that really supported us with this. And there were also quasi-examples which I should refer to and explain how this can be done. I think this is something that has a future. I wouldn't say that it is radically successful, but we have succeeded in a couple of cases. Yours truly was able to organize 2 or 3 business events between Russia and the Caribbean society countries. We did this every time on the island of Grenada. The business program was business-oriented, trade in fruits and vegetables, supplies of different goods, and so on. Anything that is typical for a multilateral agenda. But for certain reasons, I like to infuse this with cultural aspects. And essentially, that's what I'm doing this for. For example, we gifted some clippings from Soviet newspapers to the National Grenada Museum. The clippings of newspapers that go back to the early 90s, the invasion of Grenada. We also brought a movable exhibition to Grenada, which was a really highlight, a good quality set of reproductions by Dmitry Polikanov, the Russian painter, on biblical topics. This exhibition is easy to show. We first presented it at the National Parliament and at the National Cathedral of the country. During the Mass on Sunday, we had the flags. About 9 or 10 countries were present there. It was a major international event. How did this work? Those who sponsored this were told, we are going to talk about your business, but let us also provide some cultural underpinnings for this. Of course, the Russian embassies have been instrumental in helping us. And in all these events, they participated quite successfully. And Rossotrudnichestvo, Russian Cooperation Organization agency, has also been involved. The people are very involved. One of the problems that we saw was that the federal agency, shortly known as Rossotrudnichestvo, is essentially held hostage to the requirements of the Russian tax code. They're not allowed to involve private funding, and that's a vicious circle that is hard to break. And I try to join my forces with Rossotrudnichestvo, but I always realized that the money would be coming from the sources that I will find. That's how it is. A couple of pleasant notes. Latin Americans and Brazilians do not provide a lot of money. These are modest investments, especially given the difficulties of logistics. It's usually something joint. So it's either a long flight or a long sail, and it requires money, quite significant money. If we take this story with the Lazarev and Bellingshausen trip, hopefully we'll be able to erect a couple of more monuments. In force majeure events, you can fly, but we're not going to do this. But we've done this. We know that it costs $25,000.
If you ship it by ship, that's $5,000. We tried both. The best time was when we worked with the Arctic and Antarctic Institute in St. Petersburg. They put this monument on their ship, and 4 months later, the ship reached the Balance House station in the Antarctic, and we had a contest for Antarctic explorers to find the best place for the monument, and they did find a very good spot. So now this monument is also in the Antarctic. But anyway, $25,000 or $5,000, that's a lot of money. Anyway, in Latin America, the most I could raise was $15,000 from the government. And this was for an event that did take place. It happened before the World Cup in Russia. Do you remember? The first World Cup took place in Montevideo, in the Centenary Stadium. So we took a piece of soil from the Centenary Stadium from Uruguay and brought it to Russia. Of course, we had a little problems with sanitary control at the border, but we brought it to Russia, and this is sacred soil. And we distributed it among various football stadiums in Russia. The best grass on the football pitch is in Samara and in St. Petersburg, and that's grass from Uruguay. So the Uruguay government, I think, gave us $15,000. Actually, I think it was $12,000. This was enough for tickets, to cover the tickets. This did not even cover anything else. And still, if we look at Mercosur countries, Russia sends fertilizers to Latin America, and those countries send mostly food to Russia. For example, with my project with the Bellingshausen monuments, it didn't work, but they're business people. I cannot tell them what to do. But if you approach them with an idea of a business forum that will include something cultural, this works. They're usually willing to do that. For example, we do have a lot of projects with the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. So this way, this usually works. You tell them, I have a business idea, business forum. They always love that. But then you tell them, okay, and in addition to that, we want to have a cultural event. And they say, okay. So toward the end of my speech, I want to apologize because I was speaking in this kind of funny manner. I did not really consider the serious systemic things that you have been talking about, but I just gave you a few practical, specific examples of how I usually do things. And since we talk about BRICS countries today, I think it makes sense to incorporate this into the new bank, new BRICS bank. There is this institution, and countries like Argentina. Recently, Argentina said they want to join BRICS. That's because they want to be part of this BRICS bank and get some money through this bank. Sustainability, which has a cultural component. SDGs, they also include culture and arts. So I think one thing we could do is we could use the BRICS bank to advance this agenda. If all BRICS countries join this initiative, I think this could be quite successful because bankers love arts. And the very last thing from me, there is an expression in Spanish. This is, I just want to say a very big thank you to Mr. Usmanov's foundation, because our most ambitious projects, we were only able to do them because of your foundation, Nikolay, because of your support.
Скажу, придумал, пока говорил, но мне кажется, идея, которую можно было бы подергать. Вот так, спасибо за внимание.
So I think one thing we could try is going through the BRICS Bank. Thank you very much. And actually, I think the project you did with the Polikanov's pictures is great. Yes, we're going to have a meeting about this next week. And monuments, I think this is a great idea. People often like to erect monuments, but they don't give it proper thought. And what you did is very different. Right. Because when Russian ships go to those seaports, crew members often go to lay flowers to these monuments. We found very good spots for all these monuments. In Rio, for example, it's at the airport. That's one of the first things you see when you land in Rio. In Montevideo, it's the Navy Square. They have a lot of events at the square. And in the Antarctic, when tourists go there to King George, that's the first thing they see, the Russian church. I'm not a religious person myself, but it's nice. And then our monument. And then there is a Chilean monument behind that. Okay, I apologize. I have to run because I have a live TV appearance in a few minutes. Okay. Let's go back to India now. We have Rajib joining us. And you organize a lot of cultural events.
Thank you so much for inviting me from India. And thanks to all the donors, the organizers, and Dasha. So quickly, yes, I mean, these are the quite good points which you have brought into. And I'll tell you that what goes on in India and what is our focus. First of all, I would just like to define the culture in this way, that probably we need to take it to the community that this is not, we are not talking about only dance, we are not talking about only the singing, vocals. We are talking about a culture which is goes far, far beyond that. And my sense is that we need to go and tell to the world that if we can have a great culture across the world, we can live the peace and harmony. So United Nations and all the big forums should come into the picture and should support that one for the peace, harmony, and to have a sustainable, the world for the long term, which will help all of us across the globe. So from this perspective, so when we talk about the culture, so in India, yes, there are a lot of the schemes through which the government supports. We are doing it from the NGO called Lee Rhythm. So we are based in Delhi, and we are there since the last 15 years, and we have done maybe hundreds of cultural events, maybe more than that. We have trained more than thousands of students. The intention for this is that not to only to go for the kind of the music, arts and dance, but also to create the students, and so that they can support on their livelihood in the future by getting the proper training, through the culture. I am a great believer of this. I am the co-founder of this. Though my domain is finance, but the thing is that what I could feel and I could foresee is that if you can train these young kids and young talents and can give them a good platform, eventually they can be good artists. They can do everything across the globe. They can go to the music industries. They can go to the movies, cinemas, the radios. They can do everything, and they can have their own livelihood. So we would like to put it in such a way to the government that we are doing as a part of the skill development training program. we are enhancing their skills. Government of India has come out with the skill development schemes also. So we are trying to get the support from there. Besides that, there is another ministry, which is Ministry of Culture. So through them, they are having also good schemes, for the purpose of the sponsorships of any particular event. And also that if you have the trainers, to pay some honorarium to the trainers. So to keep the the old cultures alive, so the government is having some separate funds. Besides that also, but those funds are very restricted during the COVID period of time. You were talking about the individual performers. So government has also helped the individual performers. So it's a very nominal amount they have helped. But apart from that, we take a lot of the supports from the big, organizers, the PSUs, public sector undertakings, the conglomerates, MNCs, banks. So since I am the finance domain, so can have a lot of good contacts from the banks and the other organizations also. So they have, to be very honest, supported. But I personally support almost around $1,500 to $1,800 every month to my school. So it comes to the private, the donations also. So through which we are just taking it forward. And the good part is that we have just signed, 2 years back, we have just signed a kind of an agreement when I went to Russia along with my better half. So we could sign an MOU with the Sita so that we can have the cultural exchange programs. Russia should know about us. We should know about Russia. We are having very good bonding, so why can't we have the same thing with all the BRICS countries together? We can have, the one cultural event in each and every country so that, everybody comes together and know each other in a much better way. And that will give us a very good kind of, the understanding about the others. So I think that's a very good part, whether we should implement that particular one. And we are going to do one big programs event. So in 23rd and 24th of December, try my best that to involve the Russia on that. If we can keep the Russian ballet, into India. And also I have seen when I went to Russia that they are also doing, as Dasha has very rightly mentioned, doing a lot of Indian programs, the Indian dances, like the specific dances called Bharatanatyam, Kathak, the classical dances, all those kinds of things they are doing there. So they should come here and it will be something new for us, that the Russians are doing the Indian dance there. And similarly, if we can do also the same thing going to Russia, so I think it will be a good collaboration. So I'm just thinking on that way. So to cut the story, if I just summarize this one, I think that it will be better that if we can do all together, just to think on a broad spectrum, that's what we can do together among the BRICS countries. There are ample amount of opportunities we can push to the government. And also the Russian embassy in India can support, Indian embassy in Russia can support. So we can talk to the Minister of External Affairs. Personally, also, we are having very good contacts with them. So, and together, I think there is the ample amount of opportunities are there. And obviously, as the gentleman has rightly mentioned about the BRICS Bank and some other international forum, so probably that will be very helpful. So I think that if we can just jointly do all these kinds of things, and if you write to the ministries and hear from India also, we can coordinate. From Russia, you guys can coordinate. So I think it's good. And you can just bear the expenses for their traveling. We can bear the expenses for staying, fooding, lodging, and also for the performances. So those guys will get the opportunities. And most importantly, trust me that this is, at the end of the day, this is very much required to maintain the peace and harmony. We talk about the harmony, but where is the harmony? So this is very, very required. And for the business guys, I have seen, because when I go to door to beg the money for the purpose of the sponsorships and all the events, I could see the tests for the, the business guys are that what I will get out of it. So I think the main purpose is that if we go and tell them that, okay, now the Michael Jackson is no more there, but somebody like him will come and you can then, advertise your product or launch your product. They will say, wow, that means millions of people will be there. So we need to also, at the same point of time, sell our products onto that way so that we get the sponsorships. Okay. So that's it from my side.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rajiv. I think thanks for your brief description of the support mechanisms and actually for your suggestions about joint projects. I think that ENG plans to make a large series of events next year within the Shanghai Organization of Cooperation. So I think this can also be a good opportunity to get involved and to make sure that this kind of events, they happen in a cross-country mode. So we move to another Indian speaker.
Madina Badalova. She's the head of the Department of Education and Inclusion of the Culture and Arts Development Foundation in the Republic of Uzbekistan. Hello, dear colleagues. It was nice to hear about the experience of our colleagues from other countries. Thank you for inviting me. I don't think I'm going to be able to talk about what are the other laws that we have in our republic compared to other countries. Our law on philanthropy was enacted in 2015. Our department took part in its development. It includes benefits such as tax breaks, which was hard to achieve, to be honest. Prior to that, there was a law on charity, which had not worked for many years, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't know all of the details, but this philanthropy law that has been in existence since 2019, it also provides tax benefits for entrepreneurs, which is really a breakthrough in this field. Speaking about our foundation for culture and arts development, we are a state-run and state-owned organization. We were created in 2017 at the initiative of the president of the country. The foundation implements projects in different areas in the country and outside the country. We perform projects that are related to architecture. We support a lot of architectural projects, including the ones related to the construction of new museums and the improvement of our existing contemporary art center. And there are also projects associated with concert events in Uzbekistan, which is supported by Alisher's Foundation, Alisher Usmanov's Foundation, and there's also a string of activities that we implement ourselves in the field of charity. Some telling examples as the International Samarkand Marathon that has been done since 2019 on an annual basis. What is unique about this marathon? It's a charity event for the most part. Everything raised at the marathon will go to support cultural inclusivity projects, and in 2019, all of the money that we got from the marathon were spent on inclusion activities. We are proud of that. And the first one of this kind in Central Asia, together with Viacom institution. And in October, we are sending 10 more people to study with Tiflo commenting. In 2021, our marathon took place in Samarkand and Kokand, and the money was used for children with autism. So this audio description or Tiflo commentary is something that is quite unique, and we do this to set the role model for the youngsters. We get a lot of money from sponsors for this marathon. Of course, there's the marketing aspect to this. There are sponsorship packages that our sponsors get in exchange for their involvement and support. But year after year, we see and feel more support from these institutions, including state institutions and agencies, plus private initiatives. So this is a very unique thing. For the first time, we have been implementing such a major campaign in this field of philanthropy and charity. We also support the Center for Contemporary Art, supporting young artists. We have a grant that supports students, plus there are concerts that raise money, and money that is used to support those who need the money for charitable purposes. By and large, you need to understand that since we work very closely with various communities, we have this association of the handicapped people, and there's the society of the blind. And when dealing with them, we hear criticism. How can we distinguish charity projects from philanthropy? There is a feeling in the country that communities want to be involved on a more systemic basis, not as part of one-off campaigns where they would just bring toys and gifts. They want to be involved in long-term projects when the projects are systemic in nature, or it could be a major educational initiative. It doesn't have to be financial support. It could be support with promoting a particular legislation that supports education, or accessibility of education, affordability of education. And therefore, the notion of charity and philanthropy and sponsorship has been a little bit distorted, especially out in the regions, and we need to explain to our donors and entrepreneurs and sponsors exactly what they can become involved in. And we want to know what they want to get out of this. So if it's just a one-off event and doesn't pursue a particular goal, that's not good. And whenever a foundation implements a particular project, we always look at long-term goals. So if we are doing this audio description or AD or Tiflo commenting, sometimes we do this for blind people. We do this on a regular basis. But let's say if we work with children with autism, we want to do this on a regular basis as well. Education, of course, its affordability, accessibility is another topic that needs to be run on a permanent basis. Therefore, we do this in a systemic way as part of our day-to-day activities. And of course, we want these events and these actions in Uzbekistan to progress in that direction. That's all I had. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really want to make sure that Illusion Movie Theater can finally get to Uzbekistan with our younger children, which would be very good for you and would be a good fit given your large-scale event. So we only have 5 minutes left. Maybe Alexander has to add a few things at the tail end of this meeting. I would like to say that the topic of philanthropy development is something that we will be working on at least one more year as part of our project. And just a few words about what we saw in the experience of our colleagues from different countries, something that could be useful for us to do or see. When we studied the experience of other countries, we looked at China, at India, at South Korea. It seems to me that the principle of intersectoral interaction always worked really well. We know that that was a very special topic earlier, but now we have a real Korean wave with a lot of visitors, musicians. The same goes for the Chinese performers who come to Russia. And it also works in the other direction. But the sector has this problem of being kind of confined in itself, and we need to break out. We talked about charity, support for culture, and I think that charity needs to support essentially art and culture, and that's very important, and that's what we should be able to talk about later on. Thank you very much, Alexandra. I think there will be a lot of interesting studies, and without a doubt, the results of these studies will be useful for the development of the charity sector. And at this point, we are right on schedule. It's 3:40 p.m. Moscow time. I would like to thank you all for this. I'm sure that we'll see each other on various platforms and at different formats. Thank you all for your very exciting presentations and for your discussion. Thank you very much, and see you later. Goodbye.